All right, Chief, you called us because you wanted to clear up some issues. What exactly do you want to clear up that has not been put out there?
So, with the initial reports that went out on this investigation, I was making an attempt to be very transparent as possible, as I always do every time there's an investigation involving an incident at the school district.
Right.
And I've always worked diligently to work with our local media partners to ensure that we're transparent, that everyone is aware of the information. During that initial interview, I was asked, did we pick up the medical records and are they vital to the case? So I looked for those exact answers. What I determined is no, we did not pick up the we did not pick up the medical records. And I did use the word we failed to pick up the records. And the second part of that question is, are they vital? And I said, yes, those medical records are vital to the investigation to determine whether or not a sexual assault occurred. Had I taken a little bit more time and had time to look through the entirety of the case and determine what we actually did, and I shouldn't say it that way, let's see. It was after I provided the information. We went and we started looking at everything we did in the case. Mm-hmm. And we determined, and we found, the department found, that in fact we indeed did have the medical records reviewed. So while we didn't pick up the records as a technical aspect of the case to have them in the case file, the medical professional assigned to the case through the Center for Child Protection and as part of the child protection team did in fact review all the medical records, including the records that we did not pick up. So they were all reviewed, and an opinion was formed by the medical professional. We, the police, don't review and analyze medical records. We're not experts and we're not doctors. We rely on those members of the child protection team to provide their input to tell us what we have or don't have. So the media report that first came out led everyone to believe that because we didn't pick them up, they weren't reviewed. And in fact, what happened is they were reviewed. All the medical documents were reviewed. They just weren't picked up and placed in our case file as a technical aspect, and we've corrected that. We've done the subpoena for the records so that they can be a part of our case file. Mm-hmm. But during the initial investigation, those records were reviewed by the medical professional that's assigned to do that as part of child abuse cases.
So the medical records were reviewed.
Yes.
And you still came to that conclusion that you were going to close the investigation.
As part of the initial investigation, that is correct. We rely on the medical professional to tell us what we have as far as it relates to the investigation. We can't come up with that assumption on our own. We're not medical experts.
Okay, so let's walk through this a little bit and walk back, because as a mother with a kid in school, if I take my kid to the doctor and the medical document says this was a sexual assault, why would you close the investigation?
We wouldn't close it based on that. Again, those medical records have to be reviewed by members of the child protection team, and so there's many individuals involved in the care team or the child protection team, and specifically a medical professional that reviews the medical documentation. These individuals are highly trained in child abuse cases, and the signs that they look for to determine whether or not it is indeed a sexual assault. We rely on that information that medical professional provides us to know what we do with the case. So there's steps that we do. There's the forensic interview with the child. There's the review of the medical records. There's the individual statements that we take from possible witnesses. And based on the totality of all that information, then it's determined whether or not we close the case. And so we had to rely on the medical professional to provide us the information on whether or not we had a case.
So the document would say sexual assault. This medical professional, the expert in child abuse, goes over the document, comes up with their findings, and then presents the findings to you.
Correct.
And their findings to you, in your eyes, made it possible for you to close this case.
Yes, that along with all the other things that I talked about, the forensic interview, the independent statements from various witnesses, stuff like that. So it's the totality. It's not just the medical records, but those are key. The medical records are key. We have to rely on the professional to provide us that information, which they did.
So the expert in child abuse told you that there was no evidence of sexual assault, or how did you come to the conclusion to close the case then?
So, and I want to make sure I'm very
Understood.
very careful, because again, the case has been reopened. And so we want to make sure we don't do anything to sway a decision by anyone else that's investigating the case again. So the medical professional provides us, what I will say is the medical professional provides us their information, and based on their information, that's how we determine whether or not we close the case.
But do you have confidence in your police officers at that time who took that information and say, case closed?
Yes, I have confidence in the detectives that worked the case at the time to ensure that everything was reviewed, all the information is there, and that we have footing for that investigation.
Then why reopen it?
We've reopened it because of the questions that have come up, right? Everyone is concerned about how the investigation was done. And so in order to provide information and put everyone at ease, we're going to double check. So I put new detectives on the case, fresh set of eyes. The DA's office is also involved in this. We're going to use a doctor from another area that's also a forensics child abuse, that has the credentials in child abuse, to look at the medical records to see if we come up with the same conclusion.
Okay. When we talk about this, I want to give our viewers an understanding of how you conduct an investigation. Sexual assault investigations are something that your detectives have handled before? They
That's
have
correct.
experience in this?
That's correct.
Okay, walk me through the steps once there is an outcry from the beginning until the end.
So once there's an outcry or an allegation of a sexual assault, we take the initial report, and then the detective starts to gather information. We look for potential witnesses. We schedule a forensic interview at the Center for Child Protection for the child involved, because we don't interview the children. Here in Travis County, we use forensic interviewers that are specifically trained in gathering information from the victim, the child victim, and it's done in a way so it's not coercive. So we want them to tell us what happened, when it happened, through their own words. And so they're the only ones that do the forensic interview. So we use a forensic interview team at the Center for Child Protection. There's a pre-screening that takes place, and there are individuals that are a part of the team that do the pre-screening. So it's us, or a detective, it's a member from the DA's office, it's a member from the Center for Child Protection, there's social workers, there's a medical professional that are all involved in determining and looking at everything that we're gathering at the time. Okay. Based again on witness statements, the outcry, the medical documents, any other evidence that we can find to support or not support the allegation, we gather. Based on all of the information that we find to either corroborate or not that an allegation has occurred, is where we go from there. So if we don't have corroborating information, if we don't have anything to corroborate, the medical records don't corroborate, the witness statements don't corroborate, the outcry or lack thereof doesn't corroborate, then we don't have a case and it doesn't move forward. If all the information corroborates, then we move forward. We've had very serious child abuse cases over our time here, over my time here at AISD, where everything has corroborated. The outcry has happened, the medical records corroborated, you know, and the investigation itself corroborates it, and we've moved forward on suspects in our district where we have indeed been successful in prosecution and have received, those individuals have received prison time. Yeah. And so we follow steps. Again, we didn't pick up the medical records and put them in the case file. I get that. We've corrected that. But the importance of this, as it relates to the initial reports, is while we didn't pick them up, the person responsible for reviewing all those documents did indeed review all the medical records as it pertains to the investigation.
Then why is it important for you to even put it in the file then? Who can get access to that file then? Why is that important?
That's because it's important to have all the information in a case file, because that's historical documents for that case. If we had a prosecutable case, all that information is important if there's ever an appeal in the process and we need to pull all that information back out.
But do you give that file to the DA and then the DA looks at it and decides that they want to move forward with the charges, if at all?
Yes, our whole case file would go to the DA for review.
Okay.
And so, but we also keep hard files here in our department, and we store records for years and years and years. And so we have records dating back as long as I've been here and longer, because it's important that our case files contain all the appropriate information on any case. Again, in the event of an appeal, questions come up, something like that, we need to make sure we have all the documentation for that case.
What happened in this case as far as the district attorney? Did they review the file and not see the medical records? Where is the disconnect there?
There's a disconnect on the staffing. And I, along with other members of my command staff, have had several conversations with members of the DA's office that are over child abuse. And so there's a disconnect on the formal staffing of the case. And so we're working through that process. We're still looking at that, and that's an internal process within the department that I need to review and figure out what exactly happened. But right now, our focus is on the investigation. We want to ensure that we did everything we need to do. We want to ensure that we do a good hard look at this case to ensure that a sexual assault did or did not occur. Mm-hmm. And so our focus right now is on the investigation. Once we've concluded the investigation, once this investigation is done and wrapped up and we're certain that we're done with it, then I'm going to come back as the chief of this department, and we're going to review the internal steps, the processes that happen within the department and with the DA's office to ensure that we don't have a disconnect, a miscommunication, or anything like that in the future.
When you talk about staffing, are you saying short staff within your department or short staffed in the DA's?
So staffing is a process that happens that the detective takes the case, meets with the prosecutor in charge of the child abuse cases, and covers the facts of the case. Okay. The DA's office has said that they have no record of a staffing taking place. So we have no record of a meeting. My detective has said that he did in fact meet with the DA's office, inform the DA's office, the prosecutor about the case. So there's miscommunication there on what exactly happened, and we're going to look at that. But right now, to me, that's not important. What's important is handling the case itself, getting through the investigation, ensuring that we've covered all our bases, ensuring that we take care of our child, ensuring that they have the proper services they need, and that the family is confident that we've done the investigation that needs to be done, and we cover all our bases for the investigation. Not to cover us, to cover the investigation. I want to make sure that we've done everything we need for this child and the allegation that was made. Once we're done with that, I'll then focus on the internal aspect of what happens within our department, what happened with the case from our processes, and then what happened between us and the DA's office to determine whether or not we took care of the actual case.
So then as a chief, when you're finding out all this information, are you thinking, well, what else could have happened in other investigations involving sexual assault? Are you going to have to look back at those accusations, at those cases?
We've had one parent who has contacted us to ask us to relook at their case, and we didn't reopen the investigation, but we are doing an active review of that case. I feel confident saying this today that as we look at everything in that case, we didn't miss any steps there. We even have security footage to help corroborate that the incident did not occur. So I think that we're in a pretty good position on that case. But obviously, knowing that the story that was released, knowing that the story that came out was released the way it was, I knew we would have people come forward and say, hey, I want you to relook at our case. I don't have a problem with that. I want our citizens, I want our parents, I want our students and our staff in our district to feel confident that we've done everything that we can for these cases, and so we'll look at them. We'll re-review everything in these cases as they come forward to let us know and we'll look at them to ensure that we've done everything we need to do in those cases.
Chief, why should people trust you? Why should they trust your officers, your detectives? Something happened and something went wrong.
Yeah. That's a good question. That's a tough question. I think that we at AISD Police have always worked diligently for our children in this district, that we always take into account all aspects of what that child is going through. Regardless of the type of case, we always consider our children first. Our officers are passionate about the community we serve, which is our students, and we desperately try to make sure that everything is covered, that we do everything that is necessary for that child. And I support that. I constantly am talking to the officers about how important it is that we take care of the community we serve, how we establish a very good relationship with our community, how we build that trust with them, how they trust us. I want us to be transparent. That's why every time an incident occurs, I try to provide as much information to our media groups so that they know that we're doing everything we can, that we're being transparent, that we're sharing all the information as it relates to any case. I'm passionate about this district. I'm passionate about the work that I do. I'm very passionate about how we protect our youth. And so when this story came out, it was devastating to me because I just couldn't fathom that we would miss something so important. And so when I go back and look at everything, I find out we didn't miss it. It was reviewed. The medical records were reviewed. All the documents were reviewed. The medical professional, we've had conversation. We've probably had 4 or 5 conversations with this individual to ensure that all the medical records were reviewed. Yes, they were reviewed. And so again, we didn't pick up paperwork. That's a technical step. Yes, it doesn't sound right. It sounds bad. We've corrected it. But as far as the investigation goes, we didn't miss that step. They were reviewed.
This has obviously touched you as a dad. I could tell.
Yeah.
Can you talk to me a little bit about that?
You know, as a parent, I want things right for my children. I consider this department my family. I've been here over 18 years. And so I want people to understand. I don't let things go. I don't just brush things aside. I want us to be sure and confident in the work that we do. I don't want us to make mistakes. I worked for a chief, Chief Fuller, when he used to be here. He started the department. And he always said, one negative wipes out 1,000 positives. And that stands true. We can do 1,000 good things, but it's this one negative story that harms our credibility. And I don't want that. And so as a parent, I want my child to have interactions during his life to ensure that he doesn't run into these types of issues. And so knowing as a parent that I don't want that for my child, I don't want that for anyone's child. And so, you know, this case, you know, it's no secret to the people in this district and in this department. I've lost a lot of sleep over this because it bothered me. But when I go back and look at everything, I have a feeling, I have a better feeling understanding that while we didn't pick up the records, they were reviewed. All the medical records were reviewed, and so that gives me some peace. But it doesn't completely put me at peace because I don't want our department looked at in a negative light. I want people in this community to understand that we are diligent and that we are true to the population that we serve and that we work hard to do the best we can for every student in this district.
And you could sit there today and say, parents, if there is something like this that happens on campus, you can rest and bet your life that we are going to investigate it fully.
Yes.
This is a parent's worst nightmare to
It
get
is.
that kind of allegation.
It is. And I understand where the parent is coming from, and I understand I can understand that the parent has lost confidence in us, but I want all our parents to understand we don't shortcut things here in this department. We work hard to ensure we cover everything. I can't express enough how I want parents to understand that we work diligently to ensure that our children are safe every day at school, and that when an incident occurs, that we are going to investigate it to the full extent to ensure that we get to the bottom of what occurred, and if a case needs to be prosecuted, that we're going to present it to the we're going to present it to the DA, and we're going to ensure that they have all the facts of the case so that we can move forward with the prosecution of that, if that's what needs to take place. If we're uncertain, if we're not certain if we have a case or not, we're going to present it to the DA and let them look at it and let them advise us on whether or not we should move forward.
So Chief, if you're confident in your detective's work the first time around with the results and the conclusion, then why reopen the case?
So we've reopened the investigation as a request from the district attorney's office. My understanding is the family contacted the DA's office with concerns, and so the DA's office has asked that we reopen the case. I'm okay with that. I'm always okay with taking a second look at something if someone is not sure or they're not confident in the investigation. We'll always look at it again. I would rather we be safe than sorry. I want people, I want our community, I want our citizens, I want our victims to know that we're working for them, and so we'll always look at it again if they have questions or doubts. And I would rather we be safe. And so the DA asked us to do it. I agreed to it. I think that it on the initial reports as they came out, prior to me knowing that all the medical records were reviewed, I agreed to it. I said, yes, I think we need to make sure we didn't miss any steps. So we've assigned new detectives to the case. The DA's office is working in conjunction with us. Again, we're going to use a doctor from outside the area to look at the medical records to give us their diagnosis and analysis, and we'll go from there.
When do you hope to have a conclusion?
You know, that's a great question. I don't want to put a timeline on this because I don't want to rush anything. I don't want it to look like we've rushed, and I don't want us to rush. I want to make sure that we check everything. And so, you know, because we're using a doctor from outside the area, that's going to add to the timeline. So, you know, it could be as early as a couple weeks, or it take a little longer.